Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Said Dan channel. You know, it's been a little while since I put out a video quite like this one. I always enjoy thoughtful discourse within the XRP community, sharing ideas, and there was a bit of a discussion slash debate on Twitter today on the idea of Ripple dumping XRP on the market. And sometimes it is still amazing to me that it's 2023 and we even still have to have this discussion, but everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and that part's all well and good, certainly. But look at this headline from You Today, which is what set this all off, actually. 700 million XRP locked back by Ripple, 300 million to be dumped on market. And it's also amazing to me that every damn month without fail, crypto media writes articles about 1 billion XRP being released from Ripple's escrow. How is that news? It's been happening for over half a freaking decade now. It started at the end of 2017. We have to write an article. You crypto media, you have to write an article about that every month. And then inevitably a bunch of it gets locked back up, almost all of it. And then the next day there's another article talking about how much got locked back up. That in and of itself, does anybody find it that interesting so much that you have to have individual articles every single month? I don't know. I like talking about it just to laugh at it. I'll laugh about it once a month. But okay, it just seems silly. But this is what set off the conversation. So XRP community member Jenna X retweeted this particular story, or rather tweeted out that particular story with that headline from crypto media outlet You Today. That was then retweeted by XRP community member JV, and he wrote the following. Judge Torres, please hurry and drop the hammer down so they can cut this crap out, with a little laughy emoji. So clearly he's not a big fan of Ripple selling XRP apparently in any capacity. And so, and that's fine. Look, people don't have to agree with me. I don't need people to agree with me to respect them or whatever. It's perfectly fine. I just think it's fun to share some ideas back and forth, which is certainly what happened here. And I always appreciate people articulating their positions, defending their positions, so on and so forth, because I'm actually the type of person that enjoys debate. I don't like arguments. That's a different animal. Debates are fun. People being intellectually honest, trying, get towards the truth and intellectually challenging one another. That I enjoy, actually. And so I responded to JV and I wrote, you don't want Ripple to be able to sell the XRP they own to on-demand liquidity partners? That was my question. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and note here, because I don't know if JV knew this. I don't know how many people out there listening are aware of this. But Ripple, since 2019, has only been selling XRP to on-demand liquidity partners. And attorney Bill Morgan retweeted my question to JV and he wrote, you know more about these matters than me, but I don't think many XRP holders fully realize that all Ripple XRP sales are to on-demand liquidity customers. The ODL transaction itself involves a buy of XRP and sale of it within seconds, which must have a largely neutral impact on price. Ripple also buys a lot of XRP. In fact, in its latest quarterly market report, Ripple disclosed that it has to purchase XRP from the open market to meet growing on-demand liquidity demand. This is very significant, but unnoticed disclosure surely shows Ripple is not dumping on the market. But every month when XRP is released from escrow, there is FUD about Ripple dumping on the market. If people read the SEC's summary judgment material, they would see that the SEC asserts that the escrow and other measures Ripple took were to buttress XRP's price. And he's pretty well spot on there, as I note. I responded to him, I wrote, your assessment is spot on. Of course, once Ripple sells XRP to on-demand liquidity partners, they have no say in any of the subsequent transactions, and some of that XRP ultimately gets picked up by non-ODL partners, presumably. But yes, such transactions are roughly net neutral. Yeah, and in terms of price, that actually is true. Just in a general sense, in a vacuum, if you just look at a transaction, there's a buyer and seller on both ends. And then you get lopsided markets as a result of buy pressure on one side, greater than what is on the other side. And you get greater sell side on one pressure, and then arbitrage kind of evens that out. And I've talked about that at great length in other videos. That's not the purpose of this video, so I'm sorry if that doesn't make sense, but that is what I'm talking about. I can talk about it again in greater depth at some point in the future, but let me just get back to the topic at hand here. So JV, he actually did respond to me, and he wrote, I honestly don't care for Ripple's distribution model of free or discounted XRP to their partners and institutional investors, for them to only dump on secondary markets after a certain grace period. And so I responded and I wrote, it's normal for sweetheart deals to be offered to adopters of new technology. Same thing happened with the advent of credit cards. That said, I don't think Ripple is doing that much anymore. iRemit, it's the on-demand liquidity partner, iRemit, filed an amicus brief, and they told the court Ripple didn't pay them to use on-demand liquidity. Now, mind you, that's an on-demand liquidity customer called iRemit that told the court, and I doubt that they lied, bold-faced lied to the court, that Ripple didn't pay them to use on-demand liquidity. So, and also, by the way, consider this. Anytime there was any sort of discount in terms of XRP price, what has been articulated by executives at Ripple is that there was a lockup period for that, which introduces substantial risk to the institutional partner that Ripple's selling to. If that XRP, couldn't, and this is back, and so some of this could have been programmatic sales too, like way back in the day. I'm just telling you knowledge that I have all in my noggin here, but there would be strings attached. So if we're going to sell you at some sort of a discount, if Ripple's doing that for any number of reasons, and we're not privy to all the specifics of every contract that they have with their customers, but they have noted that sometimes there will be a lockup period of a year. Well, that introduces tremendous risk. If you're purchasing XRP now, what if it's worth substantially less in a year, and all you can do while you're holding it throughout the year is watch the price plummet? And so, yeah, it's a sweetheart deal in theory, but is it? It depends on when you bought it. And there's risk there, especially in the earlier days. Like, the more time passes, the more clear it is that XRP is here to stay. But if you're talking about over half a decade ago, when XRP was much younger, it was certainly a lot less certain. There was way more uncertainty in crypto markets in general. And so I have no problem with a business offering financial incentives to encourage the adoption of technology. We see this. I mean, haven't you seen stuff like that with Venmo? Haven't you? I mean, hell, Venmo literally gave me $10 to try and entice me to use their app. Now, I don't really ever need it. I'm sure a lot of you listening actually do, and it's a fine app. I have no beef with it. I've used it like 5 times in my life ever. But they sent me an email and like, here, you can have $10. And I looked, I was like, are they really giving me $10? I was just curious, $10? Yes. They're trying to financially incentivize me to get me, hooked on the platform. Now, it didn't work because I don't personally have a need for it, but I understand it's useful for many people. My girlfriend uses it all the time, for example, and she has a number of reasons why that makes sense for her. Great, well, super duper. But they tried to convince me with $10. What the hell's wrong with that? Let them do it. Let them do it. So anyway, JV responded to me and he wrote, so how is iRemit getting their XRP? And I responded and wrote, you'd have to ask them. ODL partners typically fund exchange wallets or lease XRP from Ripple. I've never seen anything indicating on-demand liquidity partners are required to buy from Ripple, but of course they can. So yeah, in terms of how the customers are sourcing, presumably a lot of them, I would guess, would be buying from Ripple, but it doesn't matter. I mean, my understanding is at this point, Ripple's just pretty well selling at whatever the current market rate is. That's pretty much it. And there aren't really sweetheart deals. That's my understanding to this point. And then they also lease out XRP. So JV then responded to me and wrote, for Ripple to be so transparent, there still seems to be a mystery surrounding how ODL truly works. But sure, they put out info regarding sales and purchases. So I responded and asked, what is mysterious about how ODL works? And to this point, there hasn't been a response from JV. Maybe he'll get back to me. But I don't see, like, what part is mysterious? I mean, other than specifics, like I haven't seen the customer interface graphically what it looks like. There could be little ins and outs here and there that just aren't publicly known. But in terms of on what's important, like from a conceptual level, how does it work? Well, I think the important things are publicly known. So I don't know what he's specifically trying to get at. But, this idea, it's just what I find is that some people have a problem with the fact that Ripple is profiting from putting in now a decade of work developing the platform that they build. And to me, I can't relate to that. I have no problem with other people making money. I sincerely don't. So when I started buying XRP in 2017, I found it incredibly enticing because it did seem like, hey, if they pull something off, good for them, Ripple does. It seems like an interesting business model. But on top of that, the reason that it would even work is because it substantially reduces trust issues associated with the legacy financial system. So utilizing XRP as a bridge currency with no central authority, that's gigantic. It's at the core of Ripple's business model. Now, if XRP were actually centralized, I don't think I would have been interested at all, frankly. But from the earliest of days, I understood that Ripple, yes, they're selling XRP, they're making profit. I don't care as long as I get mine. And for the people that do have a problem with that, my attitude back in 2017 is the same as now. Then don't buy XRP. You know, if you don't want to, then don't. I'm not advising you to buy or not buy or hold XRP. I'm not advising at all. I'm just saying in general sense how I was thinking through it. If you have a problem with it, why would you buy it then? Now, I didn't have a problem with it. I still don't. I really don't. And it's just some people are wired a little different. Like they look at the world differently, and just it's the whole corporate greed thing for a lot of people. I'm not saying it is for JV necessarily, but a lot of people, they just it's the class warfare type of thing. It's the type of people that are likely to argue in the whole class warfare nonsense. They seem to be the type in a general sense that would think Ripple shouldn't be profiting from the decade of work that they've been doing. And I can't relate. It doesn't make sense to me. But people are entitled to their opinions, so no disrespect to those people. We just respectfully disagree. That's all that it is. But then there was this, and it expanded even further. And this actually part of the conversation I think might be even more interesting. There's another XRP community member named Dan, and he wrote to my question to JV where I said, hey, you don't want Ripple to be able to sell the XRP they own to ODL partners? And the reason I asked that in the first place is I'm just thinking, like, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is Ripple a net plus or a net negative to the XRP ecosystem? If the answer is net plus, and I think unquestionably it is net plus, why wouldn't you want them to be able to do the things that make that positive action for the XRP ecosystem exist? Because if you could snap your fingers and Ripple could no longer sell XRP, and you're saying here, hey, Judge Torres dropped the hammer, that's what JV said, is that Ripple can't do this stuff here. You think that's good for the XRP ecosystem, that on-demand liquidity transactions could no longer touch the United States? How's that good for the XRP ecosystem? It's not. That would be negative for the XRP ecosystem. And so just because they're making money, it's now bad? What about them being a successful developer building on top of the XRP ledger? Why isn't that the focus? Who cares if they're making money? I don't care. There's so much opportunity here. Like, what the hell? Anyway. And it's such a small percentage of, what in terms of volume, 0.44% of XRP transactions last quarter from Ripple, that's at 0.44%. Did you know that? It's nothing. And so, anyway, Dan P wrote to me and said, there is plenty of XRP on exchanges they can use. We don't need our value diluted any further. So here's another individual that seems to agree with JV. Yeah, Ripple, come on, selling XRP, don't be doing that. And again, I just respectfully disagree. I appreciate the back and forth. I don't know if you're listening, Dan, but thank you very much for articulating your perspective, even though I do still disagree. But I do appreciate it. And so I responded to him and I said, Ripple's net sales as a percent of total volume in Q1 2023 was 0.44%. That's so small that the market price of XRP would be the same whether they had sold or not. Ripple selling XRP at such a rate isn't a problem. The problem is that there isn't more demand for XRP currently. And so, folks, think about this. Even if, the circulating supply of XRP were the total supply of XRP, because mind you, whatever the circulating supply is now, I could be wrong. I think it's somewhere around like 51 billion, something like that, which means Ripple still got almost half of the XRP out there. Well, even if it were on markets, so you're talking about less than a twofold increase in supply. Well, what do you think the multiplier effect will be in the future on the demand side? Is it gonna be a twofold increase in demand, or a 3, or a 4, or a 5, or a 10-fold increase in demand, or a 20-fold increase in demand, or a 30-fold increase in demand? Seriously, you tell me. What's the demand going to be? And so even if you're talking about over a span of potentially decades, the rest of that XRP getting out into the ecosystem, you're talking about less than a twofold increase in demand versus what? What increase? In supply, rather. I said that backwards. So you're talking about less than a twofold increase in supply, potentially over a span of decades, versus how big of an increase in demand. Is it going to be a 5-fold increase in demand? 10, 15, 20, 30? Like, what do you think is going to be? Nobody can know for sure. It's fun to talk about that type of thing. But the reason that XRP price is what it is right now is not because Ripple's dumping XRP on the market. It's because there's not more demand for XRP. That's the factor that really matters here. Ripple sells so little XRP that you can barely even notice it. It's trickling in. And yes, over a longer period of time, and I've talked about this on the channel many times, yes, that would have an impact, but not something that's going to result in an instant drop in price in XRP. Just like there's Bitcoin that's mined. There's a ton of Bitcoin being mined. It's going to be mined for over another 100 years. And that's going to keep getting thrown into the ecosystem, the Bitcoin ecosystem. But what about demand increasing? Is it going to outpace the amount of increased supply? Well, if the answer is yes, you know what happens. Price go up, right? It's just simple Econ 101 stuff, supply and demand stuff here. Now, Dan P., he wrote, perhaps, but consider the longer term. At the previous all-time high, there was only 34 to 36 billion XRP, he means XRP, he didn't write that, but XRP circulating. Now there is almost 52 billion. It doesn't bode well for price action unless, as you say, something increases demand for XRP. Let's see how the automated market maker affects the price. And so look, and that is a fair point. Again, I've talked about it many times on the channel, but something could change, but Ripple did, like half a decade ago, quite literally, put out a chart noting that they had, I think it was a 30-year plan for the distribution of their holdings of XRP out into the ecosystem. And so it kind of tapers off over time effectively. So it's not all getting dumped on the market at once. And, the same people are saying the same crap about Jed McHale when he was selling his XRP over a span of years in huge, well, to me subjectively seems like huge quantities of it. Well, as soon as he stopped selling, the price didn't go up. Because it was just a drop in the bucket. It was less than, or it was around 1% at its peak, I think. Maybe it was a little over 1%. I'd have to look it up again. But it was nothing. It was effectively, it's like a rounding error. And so same thing with Ripple here. It's not ruining anything. And if you think that that's ruining it, then what is your outlook for crypto in general? Do you not see, because you're talking about maybe 3 to 4% of humans in crypto, like on the planet, and way less than 1% of humans have ever even heard of XRP? And doesn't that represent opportunities? Like the opportunity for way more demand, like that's what entices me. I don't care. The supply side, yeah, I recognize it, but I don't care. I don't care. I genuinely don't. And so I responded to Dan and I wrote, that's true, but Ripple has been a responsible participant in the XRP ecosystem since the beginning. Ripple began building with XRP when it was worth $0.00. Is it fair to think Ripple should not sell any XRP just because free markets decided it's worth something now? I say no. And Dan actually agreed with me on that particular point. He didn't agree with me on a bunch of other stuff, but he wrote, fair point, to be honest. Hopefully price action won't stink so much when clarity comes. And so just consider this. Imagine that you're Ripple and you start building on this XRP ledger thing. There's no adoption. At that point, XRP doesn't even have a market price because it's not being traded anywhere. But you start putting real capital into it, using real resources, hiring people, starting to build out a company. And then the world thinks, hey, this XRP thing is pretty neat. And it's very, very transparent from the beginning. Ripple has a bunch of this stuff, but the world still rallied around XRP and didn't care. Just in a general sense, some people care. But in a general sense, didn't care enough that it would ruin the adoption rate of XRP. So then XRP continues to get adopted globally, and now Ripple's the enemy because of this? They've been building for a decade on the damn thing. Are you kidding me? And so they've been doing that for a decade, and you don't think that after all of that work and supporting the XRP ecosystem and taking so many profits and throwing it back into development of the two developers building back on top of the XRP ledger, and you don't think that they should be selling XRP even for on-demand liquidity transactions, which benefits the XRP ecosystem? I do not see the logic. I think it's a failure of logic, to be honest with you. And now everybody's entitled to their opinion. It's not an attack on anybody, but anybody that thinks that, I'm just like, whoa. I just respectfully disagree. I've had plenty of time to think about this. And then there was also this, so the conversation splintered off after the tweet where Dan was talking about how, at the previous all-time high, the circulating supply was 34 to 36 billion. And I think it was more like 30, I think it was a little over 36 billion. So he's about right. XRP community member Castro jumped in and he said, every crypto has new supply added over time. If you do the math, 6% is a reasonable amount of new supply. Dan responds and wrote, I wouldn't disagree with you if it was 6% annual inflation in the form of yield to us bag-holding plebs. But since the inflation only serves to enrich Ripple, I do not believe we are in alignment here. And so I responded with a couple points. And I wrote to Dan and I said, Bitcoin annual inflation enriches Bitcoin miners. Should the network get rid of miners just because the process enriches them? Is it your stance that any developer building on the XRP ledger shouldn't sell XRP because it enriches them and not you? Or you only hold that opinion for Ripple? So I am curious about that. The Ripple shouldn't be able to sell the XRP, even though they've been a good participant in the XRP ecosystem for a decade. They shouldn't be allowed to make any money selling XRP. They shouldn't be, even though it's known what they had from the very beginning. And the only reason that XRP has the price that it has now is because speculators jumped in while knowing that Ripple held that and that they could sell it. But then Ripple shouldn't be able to sell it, even though everybody for the last decade knew that they could. Are you kidding me? The logic doesn't follow, folks. It just breaks down as far as I'm concerned. But Dan wrote to me and he said, I believe proof of work miners only exist to extract value from the ecosystem. They wouldn't do it if it was not for profit. Any XRPL developer isn't sitting on a fat stack of XRP. Despite the escrow being known about for years, it is still a source of constant FUD when it unlocks. And so that's why I said the next thing that I said here, because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so you don't want Ripple to sell XRP because what they've got too much XRP. He said they have a fat stack. That's a quote. He says it's a fat stack. So then what? It would be okay to sell if they had a stack that wasn't a fat stack, if it was a small stack. And then I'm sitting there thinking logically, like, what is the material difference? If they're selling, they're selling. If they're not, they're not. What's it matter what the size of the holdings are? Especially considering the rate at which they've been selling consistently and only for on-demand liquidity. When you factor that in and the percentage volume of Ripple and their sales with ODL. So that's why I wrote the following. Miners extract value while providing a service required by code for the chain to function. Is no annual inflation acceptable if someone profits? I don't care if people who are not me also profit. If Ripple had less XRP, would you care if they sold it? How much less? Why? And so I'm just trying to figure out, like, what's the logic for Dan here? Because you got to arbitrarily pick a number. That sounds like if Ripple only had, 100,000 XRP, then you'd just be okay with them selling it. I don't know. I'm trying to find out here. And why is that okay? From a principled perspective, what is the difference? If you're just looking at as a matter of principle, there is no difference, and that's why I was going down that path. It just doesn't make sense. It's just there are some people that have beef with companies that make profit. I don't know. I am not of that mindset. It's never made sense to me. I like companies being successful and making profit, especially in the case of Ripple. They've been working on this for a decade and totally transparent in terms of holdings and this and that. And the XRP ecosystem was obviously, on the whole, totally okay with it. Or else, if that were a deal breaker, then XRP wouldn't be a thing right now. We wouldn't even be having this discussion because it wouldn't have ever gotten adopted. So it's clearly not actually a problem, except for a small minority. And then for them, again, I respect that they have their own opinion, but I just think they're wrong. And so then Dan wrote to me and said, we're going down the rabbit hole of how bad proof of work is as a consensus mechanism and what consensus is more efficient without financial gain. I don't have a number, but whatever it would take for the replies to this tweet, the stuff. So there you go. So unfortunately, he didn't want to answer my questions there. So I don't know how much XRP Ripple would have to hold before it would be okay from Dan's perspective for them to be continuing to sell it. And that's because, honestly, I think that's where the logic of his perspective starts to break down. Because I don't think it's principled. I think it's just arbitrarily, it feels like he's having this ephemeral reaction, like just this gut level reaction where it's like, oh, they've got that much XRP and they're selling. And then especially when we're going through what we're going through as XRP holders with the SEC attacking and XRP, and it hasn't hit a new all-time high in half a decade. And I think that people just have gut reactions like that. And so I step back and I'm just like, that's not Ripple's fault. They've not done anything wrong. What they've done is good stuff for the XRP ecosystem. So I just look at it different. And so I responded and wrote, I wasn't trying to get into the shortcomings of proof of work, just pointing out that something isn't inherently bad just because someone that isn't you makes a profit on something. Seems like you don't want Ripple to be a market participant in the XRP ecosystem. The only way that would be logical is if Ripple is an overall negative. Is that your position? As long as Ripple is a net plus for the XRP ecosystem, I don't care how much money they make. And Dan responded to me and wrote, if Ripple abandoned XRP at this point, it would be devastating for the ecosystem. We saw how the markets reacted when it came to light that XRP had no place in the liquidity hub. And so I responded to him and wrote, because now I'm confused. I'm sitting there thinking, so is, because he didn't really answer the question. I'm like, so is Ripple a net plus or a net negative? And so now I was confused and I wrote, so you see Ripple as an overall plus to the XRP ecosystem then? If so, why do you have a problem with them buying and selling XRP, which increases the support of the XRP ecosystem? I'm not seeing the logic in your position, and that's where he dropped off, unfortunately. So, but you can see, this is, again, where this all breaks down. And so I'm just thinking out loud, sharing my perspective, because it's fun to talk about this stuff. And we in the XRP community, I mean, obviously it's interesting. So, you know, again, with Ripple here, being a good participant, if you see Ripple as a net plus, then you should want them to continue conducting their business, selling XRP for the purposes of on-demand liquidity at a minimum. You should want that. If you see them as a net negative, currently harming the XRP ecosystem or just being a negative in general, then you wouldn't want to. But then, if Ripple is a negative for the XRP ecosystem, then you've just opened a whole new can of worms for yourself, because you're going to have to articulate to me how they're harming the XRP ecosystem when they're the biggest damn cheerleader of the XRP ecosystem on the entire damn planet, and they have the most to lose if it doesn't go well. So you can see the logic falls apart very quickly when you start just thinking through it without emotion and just using simple logic, just analyzing what's going on here. That's my opinion. And so it's totally fine. Anybody that disagrees, I just think it's fun to talk through this stuff. I thought I'd share my perspective. So very much appreciate JV and Dan P sharing their thoughts on this topic, even though we clearly do not agree on a lot on this particular topic. That's okay. We don't have to. But I think that most people, if I had to hazard a guess here, and I'm willing to, because it's my channel, damn it, I'll do that if I want, and I do. I'd be willing to bet that the vast majority of XRP holders, almost all of them, do not feel the way that JV and Dan feel. Because if that's just naturally how most people felt, I don't think that the XRP ecosystem would have been able to grow to the point that it is, because it's been known from the beginning how much XRP Ripple held. And I mean, at the beginning, it was like 80 billion. That's what Ripple had. Now they have way less than that. But it was also worth $0.00. So the fact that people came along and then started trading it on exchanges, because that was their choice, you know, free markets, right? The fact that happened and it became worth something doesn't mean Ripple did something bad or wrong. And now they hold this stuff and it's worth something. That's not Ripple's fault. That's not a bad thing they did. I've said my piece. I'll just go ahead. I'll stop yammering. You all let me know what you think. Fun topic as always. And again, as always, thank you, Dan and JV. I appreciate the discussion. Debate like this is very fun. But I'll wrap up here. And hopefully you respond to me, Dan P. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say, all right? That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.